is the difference of humans to animals, but then more so humans with deficiencies because no one's perfect. But when you have like this giant orb and it's in front of your stomach and below it, and you're not pregnant and it's just this giant orb, it's almost equal to having on your gluteus maximus being pointy instead of round. And this would be in the shape of bamboo in the animal kingdom. Baboon, I mean. And so, Freudian slip. I'm referencing Darwin. So when explaining like these things, humans can have these attributes and they seem not humanoid at all. And that can not work against someone if you're saying they're not human. I mean, that can work against someone if you're saying that they're human, but you're implanting these mechanisms like a chip inside of every neuron and throw a whole bunch of these inside your body so that your cell thinks that's part of it and it's damaged and it's just the asymmetric part that you've developed over the span of being a zygote into a full-fledged human adult. And this is why the difference of this guy in a book, he was looking at a frost. His name was Robert Frost, and it dissolved because of the heat, and he was catching snowflakes and like documenting the shapes of them melting before they melted. And so this is looking at the structures of them under different conditions, and they're fine because they're snowflakes. So looking at like an indent of a gully or just different areas of land, and they're shaped with concave or convex, and you've got dandelions over them. So this is like the shape of a neuron if you're looking at it like a whole bunch of snowflakes together collected and it's in a circle. But if it was like a top layer of this and a bottom layer of like an entire field of these things that are like convex or concave, or just a simple square, that's like the size of that can be equivalent if you have a whole bunch of them together, just as what it is to have like a cell wall. And so a cell would think it is if you had a top layer to these dandelions, so it was an enclosed capsule thing, kind of like a top and a bottom. This is the science of capacitance plates, and they're similar to what a hairpin is or a keystone, and they reference like this one screw inside of these small engines, and it's considered to be the governor of the engine. And this is, to me, I thought, like a kernel inside of a computer, Linux. And so this is what that runs off of, and they're both similar because it's like the hairball theorem in math. And so when you're considering what capacitance plates are, how they're kind of similar to what a hair theorem is, it's no surprise that you've got a microchip neuron and the ends of it were the synapses. It's almost equivalent to how fungi works on trees. They telecommunicate. I don't know how they do that, but obviously they're numerous and they're somewhat symmetric to their own design. When you have them, like, if you looked under them, they probably have like a formation like a cell wall. So that if they're I thought a dandelion head is similar to like the dissolving of the Robert Frost in an environment. If you're considering this whole entire concave landscape that it's on, if that was having a top on top of it, it would be almost similar to like transistors in a microchip. And people are implanting these neurons inside of this one book that I saw, and I'll reference that right now. But look at what it means to this. This reminds me of Invisible Ink, but a different rendition of it. Because if you press it on the road, it's going to be granule, and you can already see the backside was invisible to the front. Apply that to QR codes. And what if AI could read anywhere a QR code was? That's a physical attribute, but is using a hybrid barcode to read its system read. How can that relate to electronics and the rest of this vlog? A collection of things that are done orchestratively describe what the neurons would do if it was just one box. And this is like what your heart does to your entire body and its relation, because it never stops and it's always there. So it makes decisions on its own, but it's a part of you. This would be like what the neurons would. There are microchips in the middle. A cyborg, if he found out he could make half his body metal and he could have all this like accuracy of whatever the superhero powers were. But if you're trying to do that with other things like an animal kingdom, you're taking away from the nature of it. It's just like Wisconsin, you've got birds in their wild. They're doing all these maneuvers. You can do maneuvers with your bike if you know how to without brakes in order to avoid stuff. And it's just like an extra extension if you can use your bike above 20% brokenness and it still like do good. So this is apparent to what breaks are, and if you can capitalize off a break, you can be like a guru. So when like all these foxes and coyotes, there's even been one person who brought like this wild lizard in a water tank across from a school on like this cart that you push, and of course that had the kid push it, then they put it into a car and drove it out. And this is bad. It sounds like poaching because there's been other lions that's got left loose inside this county I'm in, and I saw like a jungle cat inside of a cage. So this would of course be one way that an animal can gain like an environment that isn't usual. So this is why these birds are gurus, because there's actually a lot of hawks in this town too. So then there's these hawks and they're dive bombing all these things like coyotes. There's a coyote pack and then foxes. And so these birds are just seeing the middle of this, and they're probably getting ate by a whole bunch of coyotes and foxes because they are here. It's just none of them went after me because I'm big, but I'll just pick it up and make it really bad. I've never had an animal attack me, other than two birds, one's in Wisconsin, one inside New England. But nevertheless, is that these birds in the animal kingdom, specifically in Wisconsin, it's bird watching because they do all these wild maneuvers. This in the animal kingdom, when you have all these wild animals inside one place, it's like it's natural environment for them to do spectacular maneuvers. If you're applying the same thing to a collection of like cells in your body and half of them are neurons that have chips in them, that's essentially an environment like the animal kingdom, but it can be horrific if it's just experimental and a floppy copy of something that isn't even a Jack in the Box on steroids. And if you don't have a choice when you're doing it, just because there's brownie points that are being taken by the medical industry on the practice of medicine, and you couple that, that's all biology, the animal kingdom, and you copy that with it being a sloppy copy, the sloppy copy of environment, which is electronics and AI. Once AI gets legs, it can get a foot in the door. And so what that looks like is you have a nuke. And what a nuke does, it's a mushroom cloud. It looks bigger and bigger on a 90-degree angle because it's radiation. And getting hit by a nuke, you have like this, close your eyes and you can see your skeleton and you can see like blood cells because iron in blood is metallic, so x-rays would be looking at them. And you can see that it's just you're getting pummeled at the same time. If you've never seen someone who got hit by lightning, it'd be that, but you'd be close to this mushroom cloud and you'd be doing this to you with all of this radiation. It'd be on a 90-degree angle. It looks like this mushroom cloud is being still, and you're under it at a 90-degree angle at any angle you're at. And your body would be getting pummeled with so much radiation. It would be like getting washed by concrete, by rolling over it with road rashes, going 90 miles per hour, and just like getting a popped wheel going downhill, turning, and your bike leads out for like 5 minutes. And that's what, if you had a giant spaceship and you're going closer to planet Earth, it was so big, it would look like it would be stable, even though it would be moving closer to the Earth. So they just cover up so much of the sky that you couldn't tell the difference. That same effect with this mushroom cloud, because radiation is on a 90-degree angle, is where it collapses. But if it's just at a constant and it's this mushroom cloud that's making it stay there, it looked like this 90-degree angle at a constant collapsing and opening at the same time. And it would just be because the smoke cloud of the mushroom would look like it's at half of 90-degree angle where it collapses. So at 45-degree angle, you would, no matter what position you're at around the mushroom cloud of a nuclear bomb, it would look like it's at a 45-degree angle as all this phenomenon of X-rays are happening around you. And you're able to survive this because you're part electrochemical. So you can see how far you can go if you're actually putting in microchips in your neurons. You can trick them and have it be running as if it were a normal thing because your neurons are already firing off of electricity synapses. So it's just in the form of like your teeth being part feeling. Even though they're stone, they still have pulp in it and it can feel stuff. And so that's how you can understand enamel. And so if the enamel is leaving and they break your tooth a little bit, you're going to have to pull it out because it's so fucked. Excuse my French, but you can have like a fucked tooth and it's equal to like a bad neuron put in, and it's like a piece of metal that isn't your flesh. It's just a random like chip inside your neurons. that's how it was described in the superhero book, and it had a drawing of a guy who was a cyborg superhero. And so that's what an environment is, and you can trick it to that, but it can be a sloppy copy and be a pain in the you know what. So today I had an opportunity to make a video, and then a part 2 to this would of course be this. And I thought I recorded at least an intro for it, but it wasn't, and so now we're at a different stage of the game. The game is biology or electricity, meaning we're all electrochemically charged. But here's a picture of a thing that I did see inside of a body. This was now in the context of a superhuman. So the superhuman cyborg is the character inside the comic books. And it's always them meeting in undisclosed locations where it would happen at least like one time on planet, and they actually are already doing this in Antarctica. They all meet, but they're not superheroes. They're just people who are in charge of things, which essentially a superhero is, but not in the DC universe. They would be a whole lot more impressively in charge if a superhero wanted to be. Aside from that cheesy factor, this superhero is a cyborg, and in normal days you would look at it as like a monster, but the cyborg, it said that its neurons were like these microchips, and it had the flesh of neuron endings. I don't know if it was flesh of neuron endings, but in any case, silicon can be a makeshift of one, and some humans do inject silicon into their body. And in any case, is the factor that this cyborg had the middle of the neurons as physical chips. I don't know if this would be anything that Neuralink is trying to do but can't, because you'd have like the center of something, not you, and that would be the maximal way to understand it being accepted as one, as in part of your cellular structure, even though it's a chip in the middle of neurons. But nevertheless, since it was a context of the superhero comic book, it was allowed to do it because the cyborg is a superhero. So with that being put as heavily as you can and as lightly or loose-lipped at the same time, biology and engineering of like solar panels. There's a few things I thought interesting. One was like a jack in the box on steroids, and it's essentially equal to like what a clip on a bike is. It's like really hard to do if it's not on a stable structure like a wheel of a skateboard, and it's like jewelry but 3 times bigger, so it's that stronger. Each bike chain has like a rivet on it, and it's just like a bearing on a skateboard. And that would be the different surfaces of like a skateboard on a mount. I mean, a bike chain clip on a mount is easier to do because it would be on a mount on a workshop bench, and that would be equal to the rubber on a skateboard wheel, because they're both bearings, and one's easier to pop out because if you don't have a workbench and a clamp to put a bike chain on, it's a lot harder than a skateboard with its wheel, because it doubles as a rubber backstop that you can press upon. And so the difference of this is it has free motions. And so with I was describing a jack in the box on steroids, with this picture it'd be kind of equal to an entire makeup of neuros chips. Like, for instead of your neuron, the center of it being cut out and being a microchip, if that was all collective, you could make it like a jack in the box on steroids in this depiction and take it from there.